do films need film music?
It's a great question. I think that, there are some films that, it's a very deliberate choice not to have music. I'm thinking of the Dogma movement, for example, where it was no artifice of filmmaking whatsoever. But there's something so beautiful about music in film, and something so memorable. Sometimes I feel that I don't necessarily remember the film, but I remember the soundtrack of the film. And there are some films where the soundtrack becomes even more important than the film itself. When we're talking about like Ennio Morricone, when we're talking about these types of films, you remember the soundtrack before remembering images of the film. It's crazy. So yeah, on a personal level, I love music in film. But again, it needs to come from the story itself.
Since you mentioned Dogma, we don't see any music play in your film. Why not? And we don't see any singers or playing an instrument.
Yeah. You get music, either score soundtrack or then you hear it on the radio, because a lot of the film takes place in a restaurant. So the music is always on in a restaurant, especially when it comes to Lebanese restaurants and things like that. It's not like French restaurants, like where it's quiet. No, there's always music running. But yeah, no, there's no. I think it's more how we consume music in this context, which is typically through radio, through speakers, through things like that.
Can you play an instrument?
I used to play the guitar. When I was younger, but then I kind of lost it. Which is one of my big regrets, actually, because I love music. I constantly listen to music. So yeah.
How do you know Anthony Sahyoun?
Anthony Sahyoun is a composer. He's Lebanese. He's based in Beirut, and we've been working together on documentaries, on short films, and things like that. This is our first collaboration on a fiction feature. But it's been around 10 plus years that I've known him. He's actually one of the closest friends of the cinematographer of the film. And when I met the cinematographer, I met him.
He didn't study film music.
We're both engineers, me and Anthony.
Yeah, and since you have financiers also from Germany, was there any, pressure to use another composer?
Very much so.
Yes,
very much so. Actually, so Anthony in his solo career or his other bands, he tends to be very experimental. Quite atmospheric, quite minimal. In some bands, in other bands, it's more like rock and more aggressive music. So nothing that really inspires that this guy can actually do a romantic film. But I know what he's capable of, and again, this is someone who understands Oriental Lebanese Arabic music, but also has something very experimental, electronic that I personally love, and I thought that this film needed a mix of both. And that's why I pushed a lot to get him. But yeah, at some point it was like, okay, he's your guy, he's your responsibility. I'm like, great, thank you.
You wrote the script many years ago. At what stage did you involve him?
So I started talking to Anthony actually after the shoot. Once we had images, I started just showing him images. And then we started talking about what we're looking for in the film. Because when you think of a romantic film, immediately the first idea is orchestra, instrumental, kind of emotional music. And I dislike that, and he's definitely not that. So we knew we needed to do something a bit different, but something that would be at the same time in the tone of the film. So something that would be a bit playful and kind of original, but something that also has a look on the past, something a bit melancholic and rooted in our musical heritage as Lebanese. So Oriental Arabic Lebanese traditional music, and mixing it with something more electronic, more ambient, more experimental, more playful, basically. And the mix of both would kind of give you the mix, the tone of the film.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that too, and we as Europeans, maybe in America too, and South Korea, you have a certain perception of music, what, how it should sound,
Yeah.
and for romantic scenes, maybe violins and
piano,
yeah,
of course,
and so on, and also coming back to the pressure when they saw the film and maybe they ask you, can we change the music more since Europeans or Americans don't understand it or maybe don't like that kind of stuff?
But you know, actually we didn't really have that problem because once the film was done and the music was done, I think they understood, you know, what was happening with the score, and even though it's not the expected score you would have in a romance, I think everyone enjoyed it and found it quite almost like a third character, like it's its own thing, and it's quite interesting because you know, at first we're like, okay, no violin, no piano, you know, none of that. And we were looking for the sound palette. So, you know, the way he works, Anthony, is quite interesting. He sees images, he sees scenes, all of that. And he's constantly experimenting with different sounds in order to find the sound palette, so different instruments. And then one day he calls me and he said, okay, I think I found the central instrument. It's going to be the double bass. But I'm not going to use the double bass the way you would expect it. I will use it almost like a guitar, you know, like arpeggiated double bass. So, you know, that's why he came up with the you know, as opposed to just notes. Anyway, I'm not a very good singer, as you can tell, but yeah, you know, he had that revelation, and then he was trying to find what complements it. And, you know, again, he calls me one day, he's like, I think breathing sounds, you know, to like give, you know, a bit of a rhythm to it. Then it became synth. Okay, I want to add synth, something that feels old, that feels very 80s, you know, like the synthesizer. But at the same time, there's something that is very playful about it and could also be revisited and have this newer sense of it, especially when you marry it to double bass, which is an air instrument. So, you know, and then again, one day he calls me percussions. That's it, percussion, double bass, synth, and voices. And then he just built the entire soundtrack like this. And then in the end, we added like a bit of piano for one track because we really needed it at one point. But yeah, that's his way of working. Mm. So he takes weeks and months to find the sound palette. But once he finds it, he just outputs track after track after track after track.
Because Nino's father has a piano at his place, and I thought, oh, maybe why don't they use more piano?
Yes. We did have some scenes where Nino plays piano with his grandfather, and we shot them, and then we kind of couldn't find a space for them. You know, again, you know, the film is 1 hour 50, so my first cut was over 2 hours and a half, and of course my producers had a heart attack, and they said you have to remove 45 minutes at the very least. So these are some of the scenes that we had to remove. But the piano is still there. It's still, you know, standing in the restaurant. But very good observation that there is a piano that is not being used. The story is it was being used, but then the film became way too long. So we had to go.
Another thing for me was when they are in the last scene at the trains, you hear sound of a train.
Yes.
In the music, just when it goes. Yes. And so on.
That is a combination of well, it's mostly actually sound design. So we knew as we were designing the music, or Anthony knew when he was composing the music, he said, let's talk to the sound designer because her train, like the sound of her train is going to be very complementary to my music. And so, you know, he wrote the tracks and then we had a pass on the sound design, and then they sat together to find the balance between his percussions and her track trains, which could sound like you know, like a rhythm. And sometimes actually both kind of merge and play off each other, and it gives you like the sense of it's a passing train and the music is very loud and it feels very ecstatic in that sense, which again goes perfectly in line with the lovemaking scene of this euphoria, the sense of euphoria that we try to express visually with like the strobe light, these chase lights. It's very visual, very flashy. With the performances, very sensual kissing and all of that, but also with the music that is peaking, in its rhythm, married or espoused by the sound design that is using the trains as well. So it's a marriage of all of these departments to give you that immense feeling of euphoria when you're actually in connection with the person you love.
We also hear the sound of drones. Was it accidentally or was it on purpose? I don't know. If I know must be Israeli drones.
Yeah.
Was it because you were filming and there was a sound of drones?
Yes, absolutely. So when we were filming, we did have the sound of drones, and up until this day, there's a constant zzz over the city. And from the level of the sound, we know if the drone is high up or if it's lower. If it's high up, it's surveillance. If it's lower, it's chasing something. So the level of threat is actually dependent on the volume of these drones. And it's very sad to say that for 2+ years, it was the soundtrack of Beirut, this constant buzzing, which kind of it can drive you crazy. But what's very interesting is that in some of the screenings we've had, people think that it's music, that it's a soundtrack. And I'm talking mostly, like an American crowd or something like that. They're like, yeah, there's the sense of music, very anxious music. I'm like, I really wish this was music, but it's actually drones.
In a way, they are right, because the other thought that I had was maybe it was done purposely and you can incorporate that sound into your soundtrack because it is a threat.
Yes.
And it becomes part of the music.
Yeah, it becomes part of the soundscape for sure, and yeah, you will notice that this whole part when there's a drone and all of that has no music. There's no real score to it because again, I think the drone in a way takes over the soundscape, and yeah, it gives you like this constant hum that could almost be perceived as anxious and threatening one-note music.
You also used, I think, 9 or 10 songs in the film.
I think more than that, yeah. I think more.
And can you tell me the song in the restaurant at the first meeting? Has it some meaning that we don't understand because of the words?
Okay, so everything that's playing in the restaurant actually is it's very interesting because it's they're all old traditional tracks, Lebanese or Arab, that Anthony covered basically. So we're talking about traditional songs that are 100+ years ago, and what he did in the spirit of the restaurant that takes this traditional cuisine and reinvents it by throwing some Italian flair or other Mediterranean stuff. He took them and re-recorded them in almost different genres. There's when they're dancing, for example, in the restaurant at some point when there's like a wedding happening, you have this track called Sidi Mansour, and it's a very traditional song that was sung by so many different Arab artists, but he took it and re-recorded it with a beat of a reggaeton track, pum 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 pum, which is so like inappropriate for this track. But then when you listen to it, it feels like this feels that it would play at a restaurant like Chez Nino, that is just a mishmash of so many different cultures and that is trying to be cool. Oh, reggaeton is cool now. Let's play some reggaeton, but then it's Arabic sounding. So all of these tracks actually are traditional tracks, and he released the music on all platforms like Spotify, Apple, whatever. So you can see the name of the tracks, and if you do a small search, you can actually listen to the traditional one.
Was it hard to get the rights for the original songs? And maybe there was a song you wanted, but you didn't get the rights, or maybe the money wasn't there?
Yes, so all of these traditional tracks, because they're all like 100 plus years old, or I mean 75 plus years old, all of them are public domain when it comes to like not the covers of the songs, but it has a technical, like the publishing rights or the recording rights anyway, like something a bit too technical for me. But I know that they're open space, they're public domain, which means that you can take them and use the same lyrics as long as you do your own version. And anyway, we wanted to do our own version to play with the genre. So in that sense, everything was open for us. But yes, I did have some tracks that I initially used as temp that I had to lose because it was too expensive to get them or do something like that. But Anthony is very good at finding older tracks, and he's like, okay, if you like this beat or this genre, we can actually go back to something that is as interesting, that is older, and re-record it in this genre. So we did a lot of that. There's only one track that we licensed because all of it is original score except for one track, which happens in the middle of the film. It's a very electronic, dancey track. When at some point there's a scene where they're in the mountain and all the friends are kind of dancing before how can we say this without spoiling? Before Nino does a big move in front of Yasmina. Let's put it this way. This is a track from a Lebanese band called Mashrou' Layla, and it's one of the most popular bands, contemporary bands of the 2010s, and they were really very popular in the Arab world, and were touring also internationally, a lot in Europe, in North America. And it's a bit like the band of a generation, and I really wanted to include a track, and I talked to them, and they just gave me the track.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned temp tracks, what kind of music did you use as instrumental temp tracks, as film music?
Let me think. What was I using as temp? I was using a lot of temps actually coming from Anthony himself, from like other stuff he did. I was using these traditional tracks like we said in the restaurant. I was using some John Bryan. I was using Johnny Greenwood. These things that I like that are not related to Lebanon, but have this the feeling that I was looking for. But yeah, they're very very much them because we did step away from them. But yeah, it was a mix of traditional tracks, Anthony's tracks, and great composers.
Which was the first music he composed?
The first one he wrote was the main theme. So the one that happens when they're running and they're kissing in the tunnel. So the way we work is, so we try to find one theme per character or one theme per emotion, if you want. So, we had Nino's theme, her theme, their theme together, and we, like obviously this is work in progress, so we end up, dropping a lot of the themes along the way. But this one is, the main theme is the first one he recorded, and the one we used 3 times in the film. And the idea was that we take this film and we do 3 interpretations of it. So when, in the beginning of the film, we introduce the theme of the film. And then in the middle, it has to be the joyful, energetic, romantic version of it. And in the end of the film, it has to be the funeral version of it, almost. So if you listen to them, back to back, you almost get the evolution of the film, emotionally speaking. So yeah, we played a lot with things like that, of doing callbacks between tracks. You hear them in the childhood, hear them again when they're adults, or you hear them in the happy moments and hear them again in the sad moments, and it gives you some orientation into how you're interpreting the footage that you're watching.
How can you musical transcribe the chaos of the city and maybe the terror, since I don't want to spoil how the film begins, but it's scary.
Yes, it does have, because they are born in a very complicated time, of course. So, he does start with a very anxious beep, which is also a bit. It goes quite well with monotonous tone of the drone. He has this, but then with the double bass, because he does something so playful with it, immediately it changes the tone of the film. But yeah, I would say, how do you show Beirut? Yeah, I think it's this mix of different musical genre that gives it this particular taste, because again, we have like very traditional music, we have very pop music, and we have very experimental and avant-garde type of music. So we try to mix all three genres into one.